Alright, so here is how you take an image and convert it into a bitmap that you can use for laser burn for doing some really pretty images on any type of product that you want to use that with. So you start with your image. You would have already gone in, done any basic retouching for blemishes, stray hairs that you normally would want to do before you start the process. So the first thing you do is you hit Control J 3 times so that you have 3 different copies of the same exact image. We're going to go ahead and turn off the top 2. And above the first copy, we're going to go ahead and make a black and white adjustment layer right above it. We're not going to play around with all of these settings to make it look good. We just need it to be black and white because that's what we're going to be working with. Now we're going to go to our original first copy layer. And the first thing we're going to do is Control I to invert it, so we make it into a negative. We're then going to right click and make that into a smart object, just in case we need to go back later and adjust any of the filters that we're going to apply to it to make it look better. From there, we're going to set our blend mode to color dodge. What color dodge does is it looks for the differences between them and it equals them out. So when it sees the opposite, it's just going to make it white. And the reason we want to do that is we're going to come up and we're going to do a blur, Gaussian blur. And by doing the Gaussian blur, we offset the details from each other so that we have areas where the values no longer equal each other to give us white. Instead, they kind of blur out and it gives us this really nice looking image here. And what you want to do is, there are no magic numbers to this. I wish I could say there was. If you go down low, you get more of a line drawing. If you go up higher, you get more black and white image looking. You kind of want somewhere in between the two. Usually I find somewhere between 25 and 55 looks pretty good. It's just going to be a variation on each one. Look up a little bit higher here. There we go. What we're looking for is we're looking for a good line separation, and we're getting some nice gradations into our shadows. We're not worried about the detail. We're going to be adding those in with these other 2 layers right up here. So we can go ahead and say OK. And you can see that we went right into it. If we looked at it without the black and white, you can see we got color which we don't want. We want it to be a black and white. Because the laser only cares about black and white, we're going to make it for that right off the bat. So we're going to go ahead and select the layer above that, so our second copy layer. And what we're going to do with this one is we're going to come in here and we're going to go under Filter and Stylize. And we're going to go for glowing edges. This one has definite numbers. All the way to the left for edge width, and then brightness and smoothness all the way to the right. We're going for the extremes. If you want to play around and look at them differently, you can. You can see, it starts to spread out a little bit more with edge width. We don't want that. We want that nice crispness. We want the edge brightness when we look at these edges. And we're looking for a good separation of everything. So we're going to go ahead and say OK. Boom, there we go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to desaturate it. So Shift, Control, and U will give us the desaturation. And then Control I again to invert it. Here we go. And we're going to set our blend mode to multiply, which only looks for the darker values. So you can see when we do that, see how we started adding in our details around our edges with all of that, around the eyes, the hair, down into the outfit. We're getting more detail added in. Now we're going to go to our top layer, turn that one on. And with our top layer, we're going to go ahead, desaturate, so Shift Control U to desaturate that. We're going to also convert this one to a smart object. Boom, just in case we need to change the settings after we look at it. And we're going to go to Filter And under filter, we have sketch and chalk and charcoal. So what we're going to be looking for with this one, you can see that we're getting these details kind of added in, but they're not a gradation, they're kind of sketching. So you can play around with these if you want to. You can see if you take the chalk area down, here we'll zoom out here. You can see when you do that, you get darker and lighter areas. And same thing with the chalk area. You go up higher, you get more white. If you come down lower, you get more of those grays into the skin tone, which is kind of what we're wanting for. And then if we do pressure, generally keep it at 1. If you go up high, it gets too contrasty. So we want to come down here to 1. 0, it just gets too muddy. So 1, boom, come on, 1 seems to be the magic spot. And basically we're going to play with the chalk and charcoal area to get it more to where we want to. And we're looking for a good amount coming into that skin tone that we want. We're going to say okay. And we're now going to set our blend mode to multiply. So you can see that when we do that, we get our grays coming into the skin tone. But they're not a gradation. They're stroke marks to denote a gradation, which is very important for going with the laser, which is only going to do black or white pretty much. So we're going to be controlling it very much like you do the halftone in the newsprint. So you come up here. I know that. I want to zoom out. There we go. So for me, I picked this one on purpose because it has this big dark area behind her. And my experience is when you get big dark areas like that, they just don't look that good on the wood laser because it just creates too big of an area. So for me, what I like to do is make a whole new layer. So Shift Control N to make a new layer. Mode normal. Come in here with my brush tool. Going to go to white. I'm going to go to 100% opacity with the big brush. Come on, use my right bracket key to make the brush bigger. I'm just going to paint in white because I kind of like instead of burning the wood in, I kind of like to use the natural wood grain to just kind of make it look pretty. Then I'm going to come down to 20% opacity. I hit 2 on the numeric keyboard and that just takes it down to 20% for me. And then with a smaller brush, kind of get a little bit closer and a little more softer edge around the subject. Come in here, lighten that up a little bit. And then come in here and do a filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And this one I am going to take up pretty high just so it gives it a nice smooth transition. Alright, so say okay. Now what we want to do is we want to control our brightness and darkness areas so that we get a much better looking print. So if we zoom in, we can see that like on the teeth down here, go with a smaller brush, down on the teeth here, up in the eye we got these little dark lines. And this is just a process that happens. There's no way to get rid of it while you're doing it. Just going to make it easier to do it afterwards. So we're going to Shift Control N to make a new layer. We're going to call it DB for Dodge Burn. We're going to set our blend mode to soft light. So if we use white, it makes stuff lighter. If we use black, it makes stuff darker. I'm going to come in here with a 60% opacity. I hit the 6 on my keyboard. And with a much smaller brush, so I use the left bracket key. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here in these areas where it's a little too dark. I'm going to do a couple of movements over here and lighten them up a bit so that they're going to stand out a little bit more from our background. And this is something, after doing this for a while, you just kind of develop a feel for what you're going to need to do. We can come in here with a bigger brush, maybe go down to 40%. And generally I don't like big dark areas right next to a change because the lasers tend to make a really hard transition. So I kind of open them up just a little bit. There we go. And these are just quick passes. And anywhere else that I might want to make lighter, I'm going to go ahead and make lighter. But right now we're just going to do this real quick. I can open up those so it doesn't go black. We can pick up some of that detail. Coming in here, and then I'm going to come in and hit X to go to my black, and I'm going to take this down to 20% because black builds up really fast. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, I'm just going to like darken up my shadows a little bit. And again, these are, you know, multiple passes coming along here. Maybe add some little texture into those eyes by darkening them up. Go to a little bigger brush, come in here. Add a little right into the eye lashes. Maybe do the bottom of the lip so it's got a little more, looks a little more full. Some of these areas in the hair where the tones are just very similar, I'm going to add some, and these are multiple passes because I'm at 20%. I'm going to build it up gradually instead of trying to do it all at once. Same thing down here. We got some areas that just could be a little more depth to them. Alright, so we got this nice looking image right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, Shift Control E, and flatten it. So that's one image right now, no layers involved. And these little areas right here, I'm going to go ahead with the healing brush, a little smaller brush, and I'm just going to clean these up. And anywhere else that I might have some, you know, areas like that, you know, I got this little one on the tooth there, just kind of clean them up so they look nicer. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to make a new layer, so Shift Control N, new layer. And with my brush tool set to about 20%, make sure I got it white. I'm just going to come in here and kind of clean up this little eye area. Same over here, just so it's going to look pretty. There we go, and I can Control E, lock that down. So now we have our image that we want to use. So what we need to do is we need to convert it over to a bitmap, which is going to make it much easier for the laser to work with. So we're going to come up to Image, Mode, and you can't go straight to bitmap because right now it is an RGB, even though it looks grayscale. So you have to convert it to grayscale to begin with. Say, yep, go ahead, discard all the color information. We don't want it anymore. Now you can come up to Image, Mode, and Bitmap. And the settings you want to use is you want it to have an output at 300, and you want the diffusion dither. You don't want the 50% pattern halftone, you want diffusion. That's the one to go for because it's a little more random in the placement of it. So it gives you a little bit smoother transitions than the organized ones or the halftone does. So we're going to go ahead and say OK. And you can see that when we did that, if you zoom in all the way to 100%, that we have a really nice fine dithered pattern that's giving us good detail all the way around. You know, if you kind of go back one, the resolution of the monitor mixes up and you can see it's a little bit more heavy-handed. But when we come back down here, you can see, and this is what it's going to print up looking like for us. For me, I have the power at 22.5% for my Macs. I have it set to 0 for for my minimum. My travel speed seems to work good between a 180 and a 220. This is on a 60 watt laser. Works really nice for me. It does take a little bit while. 5x7 size usually takes maybe 30 to 40 minutes to print out. 8x10 can take maybe a little bit over an hour. Going with the little slower speed does give you a little bit finer detail. I output it at the DPI on 318 for the laser, and it interacts really nice with the 300 DPI of the dither that we apply to this. I then take the board out, go with a water-based urethane coating, clear coat, and what that does is the burn residue gets kind of dissolved a little bit and smeared around a little bit, so it gives it a little more finer shading around your areas, which is a nice illusion. Wait for that to dry, sand it down nice and smooth. 2 more coats of the clear coat, and it's ready to go. Hopefully this helped you out. If you liked some of the Photoshop techniques that I showed here, I do have a Patreon subscription channel you can check out. There are a couple of free videos on there. I work with several other photographers on Photoshop and photography techniques. You can just look at the link down here. I'll see if I can make it link to it, otherwise it's just going to be text. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know if there's anything else you need, and bye.